And first of all, a warm welcome to everyone. And while I'm starting here my presentation, now you should be able to see it. Yeah, so thanks for the invitation. And what I would like to start off with is maybe point out a little bit the strategic changes we see in the market right now. So what's happening with enterprises? And basically, we could bring it to one thing when we think about the big shifts in the market is that data has become more strategic for enterprises, so for their competitiveness, for the future. And also many companies see that data brings certainty in an increasing uncertain world. With all the changes we are seeing, that data is actually something that they can hold on to, that reflects what's actually happening. So it becomes increasingly valuable for enterprises. But now to use this asset, to really leverage the competitive advantages that the data might bring to a business, there's one thing and one big step that many companies actually need to do, and that's to establish something that you could call a data democracy. What that term means is that we need to infuse data all across the organization. So we need to be able to use it all across the organization. And if we are honest, often today, it actually looks more like data kingdoms. So there are pockets of expertise, there are data silos that's being used. So there are these hotspots in the enterprise, but many now see that this is not enough. They need to bring data across the enterprise to basically everyone, and everyone should be able to use it in some fashion. And that's what data democracy actually means. If we look at the market and paradigm shifts that basically are connected with this big development, I would like to separate today two areas. One is a more, let's say, technical approach. And there's a term now and an idea or a concept in the market called the data fabric that gets more and more attention and more fans. And what that actually means, I will show that in the next slide. But there's a second topic that's connected to this again. This is an increasing awareness. If we want to bring data all across the organization, we need to improve our capabilities and possibilities to actually operationalize what we build. So terms like MLOps, AIOps, data ops become increasingly popular because what's behind here is the effort to actually operationalize whatever we build with data, what we can do with data in a better way. So often we saw many companies rather running prototypes, experimenting, but this is over now. Data has shown its value. Now we need to operationalize it, meaning we have to bring it into an operational fashion that is stable, scalable, performant. And that's what many companies are actually struggling with right now, and that they're trying to solve. And that's often what's labeled as data ops, but something that needs to be achieved. On the right-hand side, I would like to point out more the organizational changes we are seeing in organizations. And there's one term that's really dominant since maybe 1 or 2 years now. That's the data mesh. And what that actually is, I'd like to explain it, but also give you a perspective on how I see that topic. But we see that data basically also organizationally is coming out of more centralized, of more centers of expertise. Again, across the enterprise, this is a movement of decentralization. And that's the only way we can achieve a data democracy, if data is available everywhere. Lastly, also this idea of data teamwork. So the question is here about the people. So who's running it? So who is basically building data pipelines? Who's modeling the data? Who's modeling the analysis? Who's using it? And there for a time, there was this new basically role, the data scientist, that was really described as a unicorn. Someone that basically could do everything. But we have passed that. We know now that it's really teamwork, that we need to work together. It's a collection, an assembly of different skills that we need, from very data related, from very analysis related, but also business related skills that need to come together to make this actually happen. In the short time I have, I would just point out two concepts in more detail. One is the data fabric, because it's getting more and more dominant in the discussion here. And you could see the data fabric as an evolution in the data architecture discussion. And you're all very aware, coming out of let's say a data background, that there has been this data warehouse concept that has been around for a long time and is still around. We just recently ran an empirical study on more than 250 companies globally, and more than 80% are using a data warehouse. So it's not a dead concept, it's still alive and kicking, and it's providing value. But things have evolved, yeah? And especially in the 2010s, so maybe the last 10 to 15 years, we saw a lot of innovation and changes. The data lake came into play. So this is basically, first of all, more for the unstructured side, so we don't need to structure and harmonize data upfront. That was quite an appealing concept, also together often with the term big data, meaning we had different polystructured data sources that we wanted to integrate now. The data hub was, for a short time, a popular concept that didn't last for very long. But what's really popular right now is the lakehouse. So it's basically the combination of the lake and the warehouse, yeah, using lake technology, for example, as a single point of truth, or to integrate different polystructured data, but also still be able to use the data warehouse with all the benefit it provides. The thing that's common with all these concepts here is that they are all propagating to store data in one single place. That's the key idea, bring it together to be able to use it. But reality shows this is typically not what's going to happen. And it's actually not even possible for many companies to actually achieve that anymore. So we have distributed data landscape, we have growing data volumes, we have increasing heterogeneity. And so it's extremely hard to get control over the data landscape overall. But to even integrate all data in one physical place, we see more and more companies that said, well, this is never going to happen. Why are we still trying it? We have tried it for 30 years now. It's not happening. It doesn't work. So what's the new idea here? And that's the data fabric. And what we are thinking about here is we say, okay, let's use all these technologies and architectures that I've just described, where it's fitting. So we still need data lakes, for example, for sensor data, for polystructured data. We still need data warehouse for decision support, but we don't propagate that we need to move all data to one single place. Yeah, so it's possible to do that for some data, to build some of these systems, but also it's okay to leave data where it is, where it resides, because what we need is the metadata, and we lay a fabric, like a tablecloth, over our systems, a layer of metadata that allows us to understand where data is, allows us to access the data, and allows us to basically use it in a federated way. That's the key idea, and it's quite appealing because it reflects, from my point of view, reflects reality in enterprises much better. That heterogeneity is increasing, and that is increasingly difficult to actually move data to a single place. Second big concept that's around these days is obviously the data mesh. And I will give you a very quick overview. Many of you already heard it probably, but what it's about, it's basically a decentralized approach, and it's primarily an organizational approach. For me, that's very important because there are a lot of also technical concepts being described in the original data mesh description, but the heart of the thing here is actually an organizational concept. So it's a concept of decentralization. We say we need domain-oriented ownership. So basically, business needs to take control over the data. We say we build data, or we treat data as a product. So we are building data products, and we do that in this decentralized way. And that's a key aspect that is extremely helpful for many organizations to think about data as a product, because it brings many benefits. Yeah? It brings a life cycle, it brings responsibilities, brings modules, and so on and so on. This is a whole story in itself, but data products is a very appealing concept that showed its benefits already, even before the term data mesh got so popular. Then there's this idea about a self-serve data platform. So meaning if we want to build data products in the domains in a decentralized way, yeah, we need to have a data platform that allows it, that supports that. So we get to the data and can use it and build these data products. And then we need to manage all that. And that's the federated computational governance. That's the big headache here. Yeah, if we go into a decentralized way, how can we put some governance in here? And the idea of the data mesh is first do it in a federated way. So we need to combine governance responsibilities that might be decentralized, centralized, that might be distributed across the organization. And since that will be very hard to do, we need to try to be as computational as possible, so to be as automated as possible. That's the idea in a nutshell. And to basically sum it up, why is this such a popular concept? Is that it basically brought together concepts that were already around for some years, but it also basically supports movements and changes and paradigm shifts in the enterprises that were ongoing and that were unstoppable, especially this decentralization, because again, without decentralization, there will be no data democracy, and without a data democracy, there will be not a very widespread use of data. So making basically data really, really available across the enterprise supports me in leveraging the benefits I can get out of data. Three things I think make it really, really popular. One is this idea of the data products. And if you continue that idea, there will be data marketplaces, where the data products are being offered, where you can access them, understand them, basically also buy them or access them. And that's a better way to treat data and what we can do with data than run projects. Then this whole idea of decentralization. That's a very, very powerful concept, and it really falls into line with what businesses and people in business departments often really demand, to be more flexible, to be closer to their own business processes and so on. What that means is also an empowerment of business users, and that's what we often really need. Sometimes, obviously, it's a skill question whether we can do it, but often the need is there. And if we want to advance with data, that's what makes it such a powerful idea here, that we get more and more people in the enterprise to be able to use data and make something meaningful out of it. Gregor, that was my short intro, basically coming from a strategic concept where we say data is an asset, data needs to be brought to broader use into the organization, over the two basically very popular concepts right now, fabric and mesh, and showing why I think this is so popular right now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Carsten. So when I hear that, I have a lot of question marks. So of course, this new concept sounds very popular. And when we think back to the centralized enterprise data warehouse area, it's 180 degrees the opposite of what we have done so far in the past. So I know you have a lot of experience with customers which are currently approaching this data mesh concepts. Is it really a kind of a black and white decision that you, in the past, you do everything decentralized, and now in the past you do everything centralized, and now you're doing everything decentralized, especially that you have mentioned that governance part and so on. So being responsible for a data product is okay from my point of view, but if you have hundreds of those data product owners in a company, I assume it's not that easy to manage them, that they are doing the same, and I'm able to rely on that, what they are producing. So it's a question of service levels in this.
Absolutely. Area. Yeah. So is it black and white? Obviously, often the reality is not. And the concept, actually, it's quite explicit. It says, no more centralization, no more data warehouses. Yeah, we need to decentralize everything. But in reality, and you mentioned our experience as an analyst company, we work with a lot of companies and how to implement these concepts successfully. We see that it is more gray than black and white, because there's some things that you think about that you don't really want to decentralize, that are often in some parts of the governance. For example, the data protection, the GDPR. That's often something that we see that remains centralized because the enterprise says, well, this is so important for us, and we do not really want to mess this up, that we need to have central control over that. A very good example for that would be Zalando, the big online retailer here in Germany, that says, well, customer data, it's so crucial. this is something we govern centrally. While still it's okay for everyone decentralized, and they are very far advanced, by the way, with the data mesh concept. So they have data teams basically in every department, and they are really far advanced in building data products. But still, some governance rules, especially how to treat customer data or how to get to customer data, that's still managed centrally. Second aspect here is that the concept is really an organizational concept, meaning that it's actually open how you want to implement the data platform here that you need. And we see many different ways. To stay with the Zalando example, they actually built a central data platform. Yeah? So that's centrally managed, and the decentral data teams can use it. Yeah? So they have their areas and so on. So they make it possible, but it's still, in terms of like a system or platform, it's central. Another example would be Delivery Hero, the big online delivery service. They are very decentralized. Yeah? So basically the role of the central department here would be to, for example, build templates. So the decentral data teams, they build their own data platform, but they have templates for certain aspects. Mm-hmm. And what the central team actually still controls would be a central corporate data model that is needed for any type of decision-making or any type of data that's actually describing the enterprise across. Yeah, so there are always some things that you want to keep central, but it's some governance aspects. One, and the second is, I think, very important notion here is that the physical implementation of the data platform is actually independent from whether it's central or decentralized. You can do both, and both would be compliant with the data mesh approach because it's so organizational in nature.
Okay. So it's not really black and white. I summarize it, and you see a certain responsibility on that chief data officers in terms of empowering the teams with some patterns, for instance, or providing a data platform, or providing templates for the implementation of their data product itself. So that's what you summarize from your examples, I think. In terms of what you have seen in the market from companies who are already using that approach in real life, so not on a theoretical scene, but in real life.
Absolutely. And in real life, the maturity of the different departments is completely different. Yeah, so some are super advanced, yeah, they don't need a lot of support, and some are not. And basically here, the data teams or the CDO is providing even much more, yeah, basically providing services to also help those users in the end to be able to use data products. Yeah. But that's the reality. Yeah, it's quite different across the enterprise, and that's why we need a differentiated approach and not a black and white one.